what is friendship all about? My little pony, friendship is magic.
Hey fangirls and boys, this is Natalie and you're watching Whole Lotta Love. And for today's video, I'm going to do a first impressions on some items that I picked up from the My Little Pony X Colourpop collection. I have the eyeshadow palette, I have one of the Supershock eyeshadows, one of the highlights, and one of the glosses. I also did full swatches of all of the products that I picked up. So yeah, if you're interested in seeing how I got this look today and seeing some live swatches of the products, then keep on watching. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on my eyes. I've already put on foundation, brows, concealer. I put a little bit of concealer on my lids to prime them as well. I do have an Ardency in pencil in my waterline as well, and I will link the name of that one below. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the My Little Pony X Colourpop eyeshadow palette. As you can see, the packaging is super cute. It's really old school. It's one thing to see this on Instagram or what have you, but when you actually see it in person, it is really cute. And then when you open it up, this is what the actual palette looks like. It's absolutely adorable, little holographic type of ponies, a little nice rainbow. They really have done a good job with their 12 pan palettes. I have the Femme Rosa, which I've done a video on. I will link that video below, the Femme Rosa collection in their eyeshadow palette, and the I Think I Love You palette, which is awesome. So I'm trying to collect all of these palettes. So this is what the colors look like. They're really super pretty. I'm going to do a look on my eyes and then I will swatch these colors out for everybody to see. I'm going to start by setting the concealer on my lids. I'm going to use the color Bluebell, which is this matte. It's kind of like a pinky lavender white kind of shade. That's so cute. There's even a little rainbow inside over here. I have pretty high expectations for this palette. Colourpop pressed eyeshadows powder eyeshadows have been pretty nice so far. I don't really expect this to be any different. Yeah, even this super light shade here is nicely pigmented and it's giving a good bit of brightness to my all over lid and brow bone. So the next shade I'm going to go in with is this shade Applejack, and this is just a matte peachy kind of shade. And there's a lot of kickback in the palette. I don't know if you can see that. On my brush, there's a lot of pigment. So I'm going to go in right above the crease with this Applejack shade. And this is a pretty nicely pigmented shadow. So that is Applejack as a transition. I think the next color I want to go in with is the color right next to it, which is called Sky Dancer. Right here, it's a matte mid-tone pink kind of color, mauvey pink color. This one definitely has a lot less kickback. I'm putting that in my actual crease. And kickback doesn't really bother me. I would prefer to have that than to be something that's super hard pressed that you can't get on your brush. So no complaints in terms of pigmentation or blendability on this one either. I'm also going to put this a little bit on my outer crease V area. I will probably deepen up with another color in that area as well. I'm going back in a little bit with that Applejack shade, that transition shade. I just want to get a little bit of a better transition going over here. That's one thing that I need to do to get a nice eye look. I kind of have to go back and forth with the different steps. I don't really just do one step, move on to the next step, and then move on. I kind of go back until I get everything exactly where I want it in a look. I'm also cleaning up that upper crease brow bone area with the first shade we put on. And there isn't a really super deep matte shade in the palette. these two pretty deep shades, Princess Sparkle and the Teal Twilight shade. They're both satin shimmery shades. I think I'm going to put a little bit of Twilight, that teal, just a dot of it in the outer corner area, just so that it can get a little bit deeper, a little bit more depth in that area. These type of shades don't really work well to add too much depth, not because of the shine. I find the texture of shimmers, they just don't pack the right pigment to create depth. It's not because they're too shiny, it's just they kind of sheer out in that capacity. To me, it's a little weird. But we don't have any other shades to do this with in the palette. The consistency of this one doesn't really work to kind of create depth. It probably would work better all over the lid or even used wet. Don't see a lot of pigment here. Maybe packed on, there'd be a little more pigment to that shade. Twilight. I am getting fallout on my cheek. I'm going to try to brush away. This is why I usually always do my eyes first. Okay, not too bad. So I think for the center of my lid, I want to do this shade Snuzzle over here. It's kind of a silver with a little bit of a greenish blue tint to it. And then there's this shade Firefly, which is really pretty. It's like a whitish, bluish duochrome kind of shade. I think I'll layer those two together. And that is really bright. I wasn't sure how it was picking up on the brush, but it actually did pick up and is delivering on the lid really nicely. It's like a really nice pigmented metallic bright shade. So I'm just going to go in with the shade Firefly over top of that. I'm just going to use my finger for this, just right in the center. Not a lot of difference, but it does amp up the brightness ever so slightly. That would be really pretty on its own too. So the next thing I'm going to do, I actually have one of the Supershock shades. They came out with 3 in this collection, but I just picked up the one Sunbeam. It's this very sparkly purple shade. So you could see this shade Sunbeam. It's really gorgeous looking. It is a purple and it has blue, tons of blue and pinky purple glitter in it. And this is one of their ultra glitter finishes, which is what I figured. I'm just gonna use my finger for this and I'm gonna put this in the inner corner. I'm hoping it's not too dark because I went in very light and bright on the lid. But it'll be a cool look regardless. Yeah, so that's really pretty. See, that inner corner is pretty beaming. Sunbeam is a good name for that shade, even though it is purple, not a yellowish shade. So I'm going to go into the lower lash line. I'm going to use the darkest shade in the palette, which is called Princess Sparkle, and I think I'm going to kind of go over top of that with Minty, which is actually a purple shade. Kind of funny how they switch up the names. The shade below it could have been called Minty easily, but they decided to go with Minty on that one, on the purple. So I'm going to start with Princess Sparkle, which is pretty dark. Go on lower lash line, but I hope to brighten it up with the Minty shade. I went a little too far down with that glitter on one of my eyes in the inner corner, but can never have too much glitter. So now I'm going to put Minty over top of that to brighten up the lower lash line just a little bit. So I am finished with the eyes. I'm just going to go ahead and put a little mascara. This is Roller Lash by Benefit. So those are the eyes fully done. It's just a quick, fun little look there. Do like how it came out. And now I'm going to go on my cheeks. I did pick up, they have 2 highlighters in this collection, pressed powder highlights. and I picked up the shade Starflower. So the outer packaging is the same as the palette, but the inner packaging is super cute. It's just these shiny purple ponies, and it says My Little Pony x Colourpop. Super duper cute. Really like this packaging, and this is what the highlighter looks like. I've noticed with the Colourpop pressed powder highlights that they look a lot darker in the pan when you get them in person than how they look online, but when they are on the face they look more how they look online. So I think the online is an accurate representation. At least that is what I've experienced with the other ones. Let's see how it goes with this one. This looks pretty orange actually. I was expecting more of a light shiny peach, but this is champagne-y peach kind of color, but this is like kind of a pretty orangey pigment. But we'll see how it looks on the cheeks. So that is the highlighter on my cheeks. It does look really pretty on camera. I feel like it took a lot of building up. It's not super blinding. It's not super like metallic and bright and shiny. It's a little bit more subtle in a way, but I found the texture seems a little bit chalkier, where when you start to build it up, it does build the pigment and the brightness, but it also gets a little bit chunky on the skin. So I'm not sure how crazy I am about it. I think it is a very unique shade, and it is nice and bright. I don't think the shade itself is too dark for my fair to light skin tone. I think it's a pretty shade for my complexion. I'm not sure how I'm feeling about the formula. Some of the permanent pressed highlights are really beautiful. This one I am liking it. I will have to play with it a little more to see if it continues to grab as I try to build it up on my cheeks, but it does look really pretty on camera, and it is pretty unique to me. And the last thing that I picked up from this collection was one of the glosses. They had 3 ultra matte lips and 3 glosses. The gloss that I picked up is called Ponyland. This is it right here. And it's just a pretty pink, sparkly gloss that seems to have some greenish, peachy glitters in it. It's kind of interesting. It looks really, really pretty. It seems a lot more pigmented than it looks in the tube. In the tube, you think it's just going to be kind of like a pink, clear pinky and sparkly, but it looks pretty pigmented on the wand. But let's see how it looks on the lips. It's actually really pretty on the lips so far. I don't feel like it's overly pigmented. It has a nice sheer glossiness to it. And when that sparkle comes through, I actually really like this. There is a little bit of pigment there, so it's not too sheer. You could rock it on its own. Nice lip color. So there are the lips. It feels a little bit gritty on the lips. That doesn't really bother me too much, but it's definitely worth noting there's a mild chemical scent to it. It doesn't really have a flavor. It's not really scented, but there's like that mild chemical scent. It's nothing overpowering. It looks really pretty on the lips. It has pigment, but not a ton of pigment, just a lot of pretty pinky sparkle. It's a pretty unique gloss. I really do like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and do swatches of the products on my arm. So the first shade I'm gonna swatch out is Bluebell. The next shade I'm going to do is Starshine. The next shade is called Blossom. I feel like they did bring out some unique shades in this palette. You don't really see too much uniqueness too often in eyeshadows these days. It's kind of hard to pull off something unique, but I am really liking these shades. The last color in the first row is called Butterscotch. The second row starts off with Flutterby. The next shade is Minty, which is a lavender shade. The next shade is Sky Dancer. The last one in the Second row is called Applejack. This one is, the formula is kind of different on this one from the other mattes. It has a lot more kickback. It's very powdery, you see that? It's Applejack right there. None of the other shades in the palette are really like that. That's like subculture levels of kickback and powderiness. So the next shade is Princess Sparkle, which is a blackened plum kind of shade. I'm just gonna go to my other arm. Sorry, I'm like flicking you guys off here. This is that shade. You can see it's not super duper crazy pigmented right off. That swatch is the worst thing I've ever seen, but I'm just not crazy about the way this one's swatching, besides the fact that I did that completely crooked. Next shade is called Snuzzle. Super bright. It's probably one of my favorite shades in the palette. There's just like a lot of really nice pigment on that one. It's because I'm swatching with my right hand that this second arm here is a disaster. I'm left-handed. Second to last shade is called Firefly. This is that pretty white, bluish duochrome kind of shade. And then the last shade in the palette is called Twilight. So there's that. So you can see the two deepest shades, Princess Sparkle and Twilight, are not quite as pigmented as they could be. I will also go ahead and swatch the Supershock in Sunbeam, so you can get an idea of the color payoff just on its own. I'm just gonna do this right over my veins over here like a weirdo. So you can see there's a nice amount of pigment to that actually. Also gonna swatch the highlight. I'll swatch this right on my hand right here. So this is the highlight. You can see it does reflect in the camera light really pretty. And then the gloss, which is called Ponyland. I'll swatch that on my hand too. So you can see it has a lot of pigment. On the lips, it's not super overwhelming with pigment. I don't necessarily like my gloss to be super pigmented, otherwise I would wear a lipstick. So yeah, those are all the products from the My Little Pony x Colourpop collection. On my face, I really like how everything turned out. So this palette, I do like this palette. I think I like some of the other palettes better, especially the I Think I Love You palette, which I know some people weren't too excited about because it's neutral, but it has a lot of really nice foiled metallics in it and really good, you know, standard matte kind of shades. But this palette, it's pretty, it has what you need to build a look. I wish there were a deeper matte shade. I didn't really like going in with this teal shade in my outer V. It didn't really give me the depth I wanted, but you do have what you need to do a complete look for the most part. So I am a fan of this palette. The packaging is super duper cute. And I do like the colors. They're somewhere in between pastel and rainbow type shades in here. So they're not too bright, they're not too faded pastel color. I think it's a unique blend of shades. I do really like what there is to offer in terms of colors in this palette. The next thing I will discuss is the Supershock Shadow in Sunbeam. I did really like this. It's a pretty glittery topper kind of color. It's not super packed with pigment, but there is pigment there. I wasn't sure how unique this would be. I do have a lot of the Supershock shadows and I feel like they do come out with a lot of similar colors, but this one seems to have its own kind of thing going on. I can't really recollect one that's completely similar to this one. So I really do like this. The highlighter I'm gonna have to play around with a little bit more. I'm not sure it's gonna be my favorite. It was not super metallic off the bat, which is fine, but I feel like once you try to build it up, it started to get a little heavy looking on the skin and it is kind of tricky to build up. I do really think it's a pretty unique shade though, so I do like that about it. And the final thing is the gloss. I really do like this. It has just the right amount of pigment, just the right amount of sparkle. It's pretty unique. A little bit of grit to it, but depending on how you feel about that, you might not like that, but it doesn't bother me. And I'm really liking this gloss. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this collection and I can't wait to play with it a little bit more so that I can get more of a feel of how much I'm really gonna love everything. But I'm pretty happy with everything. That completes this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and have a good one. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
I used to wonder what friendship could be.